What's up everyone? As you guys know, I've been doing a lot of these comparisons, especially between the iPhone XR and many other iPhones, and I kind of want to throw some Androids in here eventually, but right now we're going to look at the iPhone XR versus the iPhone 7 and see which one you should get, whether you should save money and get an iPhone 7 or go get the iPhone XR, or even like if the iPhone XR is worth the extra money than the iPhone 7. Now, I'll tell you right now, the iPhone XR overall is the better phone. I mean, obviously, if you have unlimited money to spend, or if someone's buying you one or the other, whatever, I would definitely say get the iPhone XR. It's a much better phone. But if you have an iPhone 7 right now, should you go and upgrade? I'm going to try to answer that by the end of this video. But starting off, I mean, the sizes are completely different on both. The iPhone 7 has a 4.7-inch screen on the front. It's 720p, so a little bit above HD, but the iPhone XR has a 6.1-inch screen, which is much larger, but the resolution is 828 by 1792. And you might be thinking, oh, the iPhone XR screen is better, but what's weird is they have the same PPI, but the stranger thing about that is that since the screen is larger, it kind of has the effect of the iPhone 7 being sharper because it's smaller and kind of pushes the pixels in. I know that's kind of stupid, but it kind of makes the illusion that the iPhone 7 has a better screen than the iPhone XR, especially if you zoom in and stuff like that. You kind of have that feeling. Now, if you're not comparing them side by side, you honestly can't tell, like obviously, because if you even look at the iPhone XR screen, you will probably think it's the same way of the iPhone XS or something, but when you look at them, you can easily tell that the iPhone XR is not as sharp as a lot of these other newer flagships, and I don't even think it's as sharp as the iPhone 7. Now, the iPhone XR might have this huge screen and it might be larger than the iPhone 7, but it's actually smaller than the 7 Plus and 8 Plus. So if you're picking between both these phones or whatever, the iPhone XR is actually kind of, it's not even in the middle. The iPhone 10 is more in the middle, but the iPhone XR definitely is closer to the iPhone 7 Plus size, so kind of keep that in mind if that's affecting you at all. Now, another cool thing about both these phones is that they do have IP67 dust and water resistance, so you can dump these phones both for up to 30 minutes in 1 meter of water. So that's really cool, and it's just like one more thing not to worry about, because if you're running in the water or something like that for some reason, if you're in the middle of the ocean or whatever, as long as that ocean is 1 meter deep, you can go up to 30 minutes of water on both these phones and not even worry about it. So that's one little cool thing. I mean, like I said, it's just the ease of mind. Now, another weird thing that Apple did with the iPhone XR was remove Force Touch, which the iPhone 7 does have. Now, Force Touch is one of those interesting things because if you don't have Force Touch, you probably won't care. A lot of Android phones don't have any 3D touch thing like that. But if you have it, and if you're coming from a phone that had Force Touch, going to an iPhone XR is going to be a huge difference because you're going to be going through a lot of things like force touching on an app, peek and pop, and haptic feedback doesn't really offer as much of the functionality as Force Touch did. So what I'll say is that Apple could probably push software that'll make Force Touch kind of on non-Force Touch devices, but I would still probably recommend a device that has Force Touch over non-Force Touch, and I would rather have a device with Force Touch than not having it. I mean, the thing that doesn't make any sense is that Apple marketed the iPhone XR as like a cheaper version of what was already out there, which kind of is the case, but when the iPhone 7 was released, it was actually cheaper than what the iPhone XR was released on the release price. And even the iPhone 7 Plus was literally only like $20 more expensive than the iPhone XR release price, so it doesn't make any sense for Apple to increase that price or decrease that price by only a little bit and disclude so many features that even the older iPhones brought that were cheaper, which doesn't make any sense. But it is what it is, and I can complain about that for hours, and I already kind of did because I made so many videos about it, but like I still don't think it was a good idea, but at this point it's whatever. It's like beating a dead horse. Now, moving on to software, what's interesting is that even though the iPhone 7 and iPhone XR are kind of, they're a little bit different here and there, I still think that the iPhone XR is going to last you longer than the iPhone 7 easily. So the iPhone 7, as you guys know, came out in 2016. The iPhone XR came out just literally like 2 hours ago, like it was just really recent. So what I'll say is, yes, the iPhone XR is going to last you longer, so it should technically last you 2 more years longer in terms of software than the iPhone 7, but we're still like in the middle of the iPhone 7 release of software, so you'll probably get 2 to 3 more years of support on the iPhone 7, where you're going to get a lot more years of support on the iPhone XR. So in terms of software, you will definitely be set on the iPhone XR, but I wouldn't really worry about that too much here because I guarantee you like 80% of people watching this video right now are probably going to get a new phone every like 2 or 3 years. So even if you get an iPhone 7 now, I mean, the software updates will take you up until the 2 or 3 year mark, and then you can upgrade and go from there. But really, that's kind of it for software. The iPhone XR is still going to last you longer, in my opinion. Now, moving on to the hardware, there's a lot of difference here. The iPhone XR does seem to be a little bit faster than in terms of the specs alone. The iPhone 7 had the Apple A10 Fusion chip, a quad-core CPU, and 2 GB of RAM, where the iPhone XR had the Apple A12 Bionic chip, a hexa-core CPU, and 3 GB of RAM. So not only are you getting the new A12 chip, you're also getting a hexa-core CPU, but you're also getting an extra gigabyte of RAM, which in the long run and with iOS devices, I would always rather prefer more RAM. The difference in speed here should be quite a bit. Now I am going to show you a speed comparison in a second, but I'll say, dude, like from my assumption, I'll probably say that the iPhone XR is going to be overall faster than what the iPhone 7 is. So with that being said, let's go ahead and run the speed comparison. So what actually happened was that the microphone for my camera broke and I have to replace the battery, or I might just end up getting a new mic. So I didn't talk or anything like that, so it might be boring. So I just put a song that I made a while ago, one of my beats on my SoundCloud, and I think it's Coconut Cream Pie, but I might switch it, but I hope you guys enjoy it. Just look at the speed comparison, you guys can figure it out. I'll try to fix my mic so I can talk over it and everything, but I think this actually might be a little bit more entertaining. So I might just like end up doing this over and over again if you guys like it. But yeah, the links to the song is down below. You can go to my SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/simplealpaca. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out. I'm dropping a mixtape in like a couple weeks, probably like a couple months. And when I do that, I do a new outro. So keep it locked on the channel. But yeah, enjoy the speed comparison. Alright, now that we're back, let's go ahead and talk about the cameras. Now, I'll be honest, they're both single sensors, they're both 12 megapixels, and I'll say, as I said before, they both have OIS and everything. From a bird's eye view, definitely the iPhones look pretty similar, okay? The photos, the everything, they don't look the same, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot different, but there's not one that like stands out to me and it's like, whoa, that is a much better photo. Now, a huge advantage of the iPhone XR is that it does have portrait mode and some portrait lightings where the iPhone 7 does not have any of that, which really makes me think like, why didn't Apple just add it in software on the iPhone 7 and even the iPhone 8? It literally makes no sense. But the iPhone XR overall, I would say, is the better sensor just because of the software, but you also get things like 4K at 60 frames per second and 1080p at up to 240 frames per second, where you did not have that on the iPhone 7. You have 4K at 30 frames and 1080p at up to 120 frames. As a whole, I mean, will that affect you? You have to ask yourself, but I think, and I'm going to make an assumption, as a whole, probably like 95% of people watching this right now, they honestly don't care. They just want to make videos. They don't even change the resolutions or anything in the camera settings app. They just open the camera, here, I'm going to take a photo, here, I'm going to take a video, just leave it at that. Like, that's all I do. It's not like I take professional photos on my iPhone, so I don't really care. I still have my DSLR, and I feel like people get caught up in like, oh my god, this camera is so much better on this phone, it's an upgrade, this and that. You're like, yeah, it's probably better, but for me, I'd rather talk about battery life or the way the phone looks and how it feels rather than just like, than how the camera is, you know what I mean? But as a whole, the camera is probably better on the iPhone XR, and I say this in every video. I say probably because, yes, it probably is better, but it's very subjective, and I don't think a lot of people care. Yes, it is better if that's what you want to hear. you're able to record videos at more frame speeds than the previous gen, so I like that a lot. But other than that, I mean, that's it for the camera. I mean, the front cameras are both 7 megapixels on both as well. You are able to shoot 1080p at up to 60 frames per second on the iPhone XR, so that's a pretty huge advantage too. So in terms of both, definitely the iPhone XR is better. Now moving on to something that I do love talking about, like I said, the battery life is actually pretty different on both. The Plus variants were a little bit different, but the regular size variants of the iPhone 7, 6, 7, or whatever, there's a huge difference and a huge divide between these two phones. Now, not only does the iPhone XR have a much larger battery, but also has wireless charging where the iPhone 7 did not. And as a whole, I think this phone is much more packaged and should have been marketed as having a much better battery life than a lot of other iPhones out there. And I think this iPhone has the best battery life out of all the iPhones that were released. It's a close second, or maybe even a close third, with the iPhone 6 Plus and quite possibly the iPhone 7 Plus in my opinion, but that's kind of the realm we're playing with. So what I'll say is that if you end the day, you took the usage on an iPhone 7, you ended the day with like 15-20%, let's just say 20%, you could probably get up to 45% on the iPhone XR. So that means you probably get an extra 25% on the iPhone XR than what you would get on an iPhone 7. Now that is completely subjective, I'm just kind of pulling numbers out of the air, but that's kind of the realm that I'm getting at. Like, yes, the iPhone XR has a bigger screen, it's kind of higher res a little bit, and it might be faster, this and that, but the fact that it has almost 1,000 milliamp hours more than the iPhone 7 just makes it that much better of a phone in my opinion. So battery life is a huge pro for this phone, and as a whole, I mean, the iPhone XR, there's not a lot to complain about. And I talked about this in my iPhone 8 video too, like when I compare the Plus variants to the iPhone XR and even the iPhone 10, I'm like, it's not that much of an upgrade, but between these two phones, there's 100% a huge upgrade. So what I'll say is that, yeah, you're giving up some things, you're giving up a home button, Touch ID, but you're retaining a lot. I mean, you're getting a bigger screen, you're retaining the IP67 dust and water resistance. So what I'll say is, and I'll break this down into a couple different categories as well. If you currently have an iPhone 7, I will say keep it. You are kind of missing out on a little bit, but you won't really miss out on a lot in the long run if you just keep it for a little bit longer, even a year and a half more or whatever, and just wait until the XR prices to come down, or even wait until next year when the new phones come out and these prices will go down more for the XR, and cop XR on the used market for much cheaper if you want to go down that route. But if you're in the middle and you don't know which one to get, I'll say do definitely get the iPhone XR. But what I'll say is a little bit added to that, 100% get a used iPhone 10. A used iPhone 10 is a little bit cheaper and actually a much better phone overall than an iPhone XR. And if you don't believe me, go watch the comparison I did on those phones. They're actually linked down below, or I'll do a card, or just look back like 3 more videos. It's right there. I talk about the difference between an iPhone XR and 10, and I do speak comparisons to everything, dude. And I think the iPhone 10 is a 100% better phone than the iPhone XR. So that's another option I'll tell you. But as a whole, man, like, you can't go wrong with the iPhone XR, but you can't go wrong with holding out on a little bit either. Like, if you would just wait a little bit of time, like, these phones are going to go down in value like crazy. So that is pretty much where I'm going to leave it at. If you want to pick up an iPhone 7 for some reason, I'll leave a link in the description below so you can pick one up for the lowest prices that I find. And I really appreciate if you guys could check it out there. But leave some comments down in the comment section whether you guys like the iPhone XR, whether you guys don't, or what you think about this comparison. I really appreciate if you guys could leave some stuff there. But hit the like button, that'll mean so much. But definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel that is also linked down below. I do a lot more iOS comparisons and speed tests and everything like that, so I'd really appreciate if you guys could check that channel out as well. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.